Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Political Theater, guys. I'm on the road here, down traveling in Virginia, now that I've just got back from Portland. It's been a bit of travel here for the past couple days, but I've got a lot to talk about, guys, since we've been off. I was off in Thursday and Friday. I was in Portland, and then I ended up in Portland for the whole weekend, and I flew back on Sunday, and then only drove directly to Virginia the following day. So now I'm finally here, and I'm back on the show, but happy to be back here with you guys. We've got a lot to talk about tonight. We got a lot to go over, but make sure you guys, if you guys are not following us on Rumble, YouTube, Substack, wherever you guys may be following, make sure you guys share the link out. Make sure people know that we are live right now. We got a lot to talk about when it comes to these protests, because I think that I learned something very, very important when I was on the ground in Portland, and I think that's going to be the most important thing for us to talk about this evening. So make sure you guys share this out before we get into that. Make sure you guys follow me. Make sure you guys leave a comment if you guys got something to say. I want to hear about what you think about the show. We've got a lot to talk about, so make sure you guys leave a comment down below if you got anything for you to say. We're not going to be able to do an X Space this evening. We'll call in tonight. It's only going to be about an hour-long show because we've got a couple of things to cover, and I'm obviously traveling, so it's not easy for me to have it set up on multiple different systems right now, guys. So anyway, we're going to get into this right away, because the one thing I need everyone to understand about the trip that I made to Portland is it clarified a number of things for me, but the number one thing that it showed me is that we have not dented the money of these organizations at all. Not even sort of. We haven't touched it. We haven't done anything to it, because these people are well funded to the point that when they're sitting around sitting around outside of the ICE facility in Portland, they have live music, they've got DJs, they've got speakers. For one of the nights that I was there, I kid you not, they had a meat and cheese tray that was passed out as hors d'oeuvres. I'm not joking. This is the kind of stuff that was happening while you were there. And you're watching this going, what on earth is happening? They've got people that when they get arrested, they immediately get bailed back out. And everyone knows that happens, but the level of organization behind it is what kind of shocked me. While I'm there, I'm listening to the people in the crowd. No one knew who I was while I was there for at least the first day, and I'll get into that in a minute because that changed. But within the first day, I'm kind of standing around listening to these people chatter within the crowd, and they're not being too cautious around me. But they start mentioning the fact that all of their people, their main people, are all in Minnesota. All of the people from Rose City Antifa, they're all in Minnesota. They're not here on the ground and outside of the Portland ICE facility because they were busy. They were up there in Minnesota. So they knew that their main people were all out of town, and they were still there anyway, and they had enough money to set up live shows, speakers. They had the entire street there. The entire street, every night that I was there, they lined the street with little plastic candles and had Venezuelan music playing. I mean, it's money is oozing out of this, okay? There is so much money that's involved in everything they were doing that it's quite clear to anybody that's paying any attention that this is not organic. No one knows this, and everyone knows that it's not organic, but that just opens up a bunch of questions into the fact that if they are able to provide these people on the ground, they're able to provide them frickin' meat and cheese trays, then we obviously haven't done anything to deter them. We haven't done anything to shut down their money. We haven't done anything to close down the pipeline that's keeping these people out on the streets. And, I realized something as I'm sitting there watching this, and I'm realizing that the number one thing that you need to see from this is not the fact that these people are all paid. It's not like that. Okay, you don't need to pay all of them. What you've done is they create a scenario where they've got it's like a fraternity, essentially. They've got money enough that they can provide everybody food, drinks, they've got live music, they've got people, they've got to give them something to do. It gives them a community of people. They've created a culture based around this entire concept of protesting outside of these facilities. And of course, you don't have to pay them a lot. It's not necessary. It's not completely mandatory that you pay all of them a lot because, well, you don't need to. You've got food for them. You've got drinks for them. You've got music on a Friday night that they all can go hang out there and protest outside of these ICE facilities, and someone's paying for it. Someone is paying for it. You can't just have a live DJ with professional sound systems and professional cameras set up outside of an ICE facility 7 days a week. But I'm talking to the people on the ground there, they say they do this every night. They do this every night. They do this every night, and they've done it every night for months. Back when Portland was in the news a lot, the only reason I went out there is because I was looking at the two that were shot out there. I figured Portland might pop off a little bit. But when you get out there, they're talking about, oh, no, all of our people are in Minnesota. They're all there in Minnesota tonight. They're not here in Portland. So They intentionally knew that, well, they don't have to do a whole lot, so they just did minor protests. But they were still doing stuff like, throwing stuff constantly, the ICE facility, the cops in the area. They sort of kept order a little bit. I mean, all they're really doing is letting people get into the streets, and it's essentially almost like gangland violence. Essentially, they've got all their people all over the place. They make sure that they're going to get them in trouble if anybody gets near them. They know what they're doing. But the biggest part about it is that the organization level, and I don't know if you guys watched Matt Walsh's podcast today, and he was talking about the anti-ICE organization that they had. And, they've got all of these different organizations set up. They've got these, dispatchers, and they've got online activists that are telling people where ICE people are at. This all speaks to the level in grease that exists within this organization. And to think that any of this is organic is nonsense, but everybody knows that much. But to me, the money aspect is the most important part. We need to figure out where the money is. We need to figure out not just where they're getting money on the ground, not how they're just, everyone always talks about it like, oh no, Soros is doing everything. That doesn't help us. Okay, it doesn't help us to say that Soros is the one finishing everything. We know that. We know that Soros is the one funding a lot of the stuff, but that doesn't help us at all. What we need is to figure out how the money is actually reaching the foot soldiers on the ground. We need to know how they're paying these people directly. We need to know how they're moving people around, because if they've got people that are transporting between city to city to city, I mean, this sort of stuff you can track somehow. We can figure out how they're getting the money to these people. We need to figure out where they're getting the money for these people. That's the most important thing we can do. If we can figure out how the money moves to their foot soldiers on the ground, that's going to change everything for this. And that's the thing to me, is we've got to shut the money off. Because if they have enough money to put people in multiple different cities, to transport people all around the country to do these protests, and not only that, but to additionally have it set up so that their primary, like one of their primary locations, they've got DJs, live music, and meat and cheese trays, then clearly nothing has changed for their money flow. Nothing. Nothing has changed at all. They've obviously got enough cash that they don't have to worry about a thing. They don't have to worry about being arrested. They don't have to worry about what they're going to do to keep their people entertained, to keep their people engaged. They've got enough money that they can protest every day of the week in multiple different cities, and all of these people are more than happy to show up for it. Now, the ideological part of this is a big part of it, obviously. We know that. We know that the ideological grift that exists there, but that doesn't mean that all of these people are going to show up. From what I could see, they use the food and food, drink, music, everything else to inflate the numbers for their small number of real, true believers. So it makes it look like it's larger than it is, but just the fact that they can keep providing the food and keep providing the infrastructure around it, that's what we need to deal with. Arguing with these people on the streets. I've seen so many people that they go up and talk to them and debate with these people or whatever it is. That doesn't move the needle. Okay, they don't need you to debate with them. You need somehow to cut off the money so that they're not able to show up every night and have someone provide them food, drink, music, everything else. That's what needs to happen. If we can shut their money off and figure out how they're getting it everywhere, that's going to make the biggest difference that we can possibly make. And everybody, I think, is on the same page on that, which is why one of the other parts of this trip out here is I managed to talk with a couple of the journalists on the ground there, and one of them in particular is really looking into the fraud stuff. Now, the fraud investigation that we've been looking at, obviously the Somali fraud has been the big thing in the headlines recently, but that's not going to be the only version of fraud we need to look at. Okay, we need to figure out how these organizations are paying people from state funding. We need to figure out how they're paying people from federal funding, and all of that stuff needs to be shut down, because I don't know if you guys saw this story that came out over the weekend, that there was the cash that was moved, $700 million in suspected Somali money that was trying to be transported out of the country. If there's cash, and there's that much cash, that means that the money, we can trace it somehow. And that's going to be the next level of this, figuring out exactly where their money is at and how they move it around. That's going to be crucial. Okay, we need to figure out how they're turning it into cash, which is what's leading us to the next stages of the investigation that we're working on. Part of the reason I'm down here in Virginia is to look into some of this stuff. I'm going to be flying up to New Jersey soon to look into some of this stuff. I'm going to be traveling the country looking for this stuff, because I'm convinced that if we figure out how to shut that pipeline down, that we can make a big difference. And I think that's the most important thing we can do. If we actually manage to shut off their money in as many places as we can, as fast as we can, we're going to make a big difference in the midterms. We're going to make a big difference in the country. But the bigger part about it is we've got to shut this culture machine that they've built, because that is everything. I mean, if you want to convince people to show up every night of the week out somewhere, they're probably not going to show up every night of the week if they don't have live music, if they don't have food, if they don't have, the entire infrastructure around it sitting there. I mean, you may get some of the true believers to show up, but you're not going to get the numbers that they get in all these different cities. In Minnesota, you're looking at it. There's so many people there that I know they're from out of town because I heard the people talking about it. The Portland Antifa people, which was incredible to me. The first night I'm there, no one really knew who I was. So no one paid any attention to me. I kind of just blended in with the crowd and just kind of stood around, even though I was wearing a suit, which was hysterical. They all were pointing out the suit constantly. But at the same time, no one really knew who I was. But the next day, that was different. Within 24 hours of me being on the ground in Portland, they all knew who I was. Every single one of them knew exactly who I was, what my name was, what state I was from, where I was from in the country, and they all started calling me out by name on a regular basis. I was walking in front of a major protest in downtown Portland when they had this big citywide, block the streets and march in the streets type thing. And I'm out in front of this thing getting photos, and these people start approaching me in black bloc, which is the full, if you guys aren't familiar with black bloc, is what they cover their face, cover their head, cover everything. They're fully blacked out facial features and everything else. And they start calling after me, and they say, "Get out of here. What are you doing here?" And they said something that really stuck with me. They said, "You're disrupting our protest culture." And I like that. Protest culture. And I think that's going to be something that I'm going to look into for this, and I'm going to start calling it that because it makes the most sense. Protest culture is a good description because that's what they've created. They've created an entire culture around this attitude, around this mindset that you need to be in there in the streets, you need to be out there all the time. And the way that they've created that culture is by creating a makeshift community about it, really. And that's what the money comes from. That's where the money is. It's literally like a fraternity in some ways. I mean, there's food. The only thing they don't have out there is beer and kegs in the street partying like it's a block party. And that's what it seemed like to me outside of the ICE facility in Portland. It seems like a low income area block party that happens 7 nights a week. It's funded by somebody. And if we can shut that down and get rid of that, that is going to make the biggest difference in figuring out how that money not just shows up on the ground, but how they're using it to actually pump into these organizations, how they're using it to put things out on the ground. That's going to make the biggest difference. And I think that's where we need to start. And I think that's where the investigation into the fraud stuff is going to be so crucial. All of that stuff together is going to be how we really look into this, because that, to me, if we can cut that money down and cut that money off, we're not going to get anywhere arguing with the foot soldiers. Okay, the foot soldiers are not important. Okay, and that's what I told one of these people. They were really upset about it when I told them. It was pretty funny. There's some guy screaming at me, yelling at me in the middle of the streets. And I said, you're not really relevant. I don't care what you're doing. I don't care what you do. You're just here. Someone paid you to show up here, or someone gives you enough of an incentive to show up here. I don't care about you. I want to shut the organization off that gives you the reason to be here. I want to kill that organization, and I want to shut the whole money machine down that sits around here and gives you guys food, drinks, and meat and cheese trays. That's what I want. And they were really mad when I told them that. So I think that means we're on the right track. And I think that's what the next layer of the investigations that we're doing across the country for the fraud investigations. And I have some updates on that. It looks like some other people are really starting to get in tune with this. There's a great journalist on the ground out there named is Haley West. Make sure you guys follow her. It's at Haley West. Make sure you guys follow her account. She is about to blow the lid on another fraud part of this that she found out there in Portland. And not only that, she also has it linked out to Ohio. She's got it linked to multiple different states. And we have figured it out that if I can prove that the same structure is operating in multiple different states, that we've got the same organization of fraud in Ohio, we've got it in Minnesota, we've got it in Portland, we've got it in Maine, we've got it in multiple different states. If we can prove that, if we can show that, and then we figure out how they link them together between the states, that's how we can actually make a big difference. We can shut that off. And I'm convinced, and the reason I'm convinced of this, by the way, is because every time we get close to their fraud, every time we get even anywhere near it, they get violent. They explode. The cities go into revolts. They show up everywhere. They immediately do whatever they can to get people out in the streets every time we get close to their money. Every single time we get close to their money. And that is why we need to focus on the money, because following the money and shutting that money off, that's the only way we're going to be able to stop this. We're not going to be able to stop it if they're able to infinitely fund to the point that they can keep people on the streets 7 days a week. Okay, if they can fund people to 7 days a week in multiple different cities, it doesn't matter what we do, guys. It does not matter what we do. All right, guys. Make sure you guys share the link out. This is the Political Theater. I'm Walter Curt. Thank you guys for being here. Obviously, I am traveling, so this is a strange setup for me. This is the first time I've actually used this setup, so thank you guys for being here. I'm going to bring Chris in, Chris Marino. If you guys don't know or are not familiar with Chris Marino, make sure you follow my co-host here. Chris, welcome to the show. What's up, buddy?
Hey, what's going on? It's good to see you on a comfy, beautiful chair. Reminds me of Grandma's house, and I love that. I'm a big fan of handmade quilts, so that looks warm.
Yes. Look, Data Republican tuned in here. She says the protester response to the fraud. That is obvious. I mean, it really is. They are 100% a response to the fraud. That is what's going on. They don't do this for no reason. They don't activate as many people as they can for no reason, and that is true. They are 100% using this to distract from the fraud because we started getting close. Okay, there was so many people that were looking into the fraud last week and 2 weeks ago that suddenly they had to change the narrative. They had to do whatever they could to get people to stop paying attention to it. And that's true. I mean, it's very obvious. It's very obvious to me, which is why laser focus, the only thing we can do is figure out where this money's going, man. We have to figure it out because if we can shut it down and figure out how to, even if we remove 50% of it, I'll be happy when we can get it to the point where they can't provide meat and cheese trays, dude. That was so absurd to me that I'm watching these people. It's literally pretty girls dressed in like nice dresses and stuff, walking around with meat and cheese trays. I'm like, this is like a high-end restaurant. Like what the hell is going on here? Oh, this is organic? Yeah, they have got Hispanic girls carrying around meat and cheese trays as Venezuelan music is playing with flowers and candles that line the street. Oh yeah, that's organic, everybody. That's normal. That happens. You know, everyone's got that. What, you don't keep that outside your house, Chris? I mean, just, every now and then when you need them, you line your street with candles and flowers and have Venezuelans that show up. I mean, this is absurd. It's completely absurd.
Yeah, it is. It's also, let's just be really clear here. It's also a little bit racist because these woke leftists love to put, the Latinx, the Latino community in these serving positions, so that they're still in authority, right? And so, but it is crucial. You did hit on a point, on your intro. We have to cut off the money before it gets too vast, or as they refer to it in their training manuals, before these micro intifadas continue to spread, right? And so
Right.
this is going to be critical, and I'm hoping this new assistant attorney general, I don't know that, if he's named him, but I'm beginning to wonder if it's going to be Andrew Bailey, the attorney general from Missouri, who was critical in getting, he did the Facebook, the Fauci trial, like all those things. So.
Bailey would be a great choice for this, and I don't know if he has named him or not. Now, I do have the clip from that, and we can go ahead and play that so people are aware of what we're talking about here. So let's go ahead and play this clip because this is new from the president, which means the president's obviously focused on this, and I think it's very important for everyone.
Last week, we announced that I'm creating a brand new division at the Department of Justice, a legal strike force led by a really tough, smart new attorney general for fraud. He's a fantastic young guy. He's so impassioned to do this properly. We intend to imprison any fraudster, politician, or public official involved in these sick plots to loot and pillage our country.
So that's what I'm talking about here. And Bailey would be great. And Data Republican has a question here whether or not if we think that this is actually if this is being clustered around fraud hotspots. Yes, actually. I mean, to me, I think the best way to describe this is, remember a few months ago, guys, when Elon Musk came out and he said, whenever you get close to the fraud or whenever you get close to someone that's committing fraud, they're the ones that scream the loudest. And that's what I think these protests are. Wherever you see protests, the big protests, I think that's the tell. Okay, wherever you see the biggest protest, that's where the most fraud is. Los Angeles, amazing. What a shock. There's a major protest in Los Angeles. Minnesota, massive protest. All these major cities, New York's got the same sort of thing. I think this is exactly what's going on. I think that the big hot spots are the big protests in those areas, and I think that's where we should be looking for the fraud at, which is where I'm going to be heading. I mean, every city that is like this, and I've already got people talking about New York for me. They want to get me to New York. They want to show me up in New York. I'm supposed to go to New Jersey soon. I'm supposed to go up to Maine. Now, the deal is that all of these places, I think that we're going to find significant hotspots of fraud. But the bigger part about it is I want to see if we can find the same structure the same style of structure that exists in each one of those cities, I think that's where we need to find it. Yeah, people are mentioning Chicago, Boston. And guys, it's every big blue city. Every big blue city is going to be like this. And we've got to figure it out. We have to figure out how it works. Okay, and I'm not talking about everyone wants to sit here. This is what I mentioned at the open. Everyone says, "Oh, it's Soros money." That doesn't help us. Saying Soros is funding it is meaningless. That doesn't help us. We know that Open Society Foundation is funding this stuff. We know that the democracy, the Pursuit of Democracy Project, all that stuff. We know that they're funding this stuff. We know that. We need to know how they get the money to the granular level, how they're getting these people out of jail. And I actually talked with somebody earlier today who said one of the things that they would do is that when these people get bailed out of jail, that they have prepaid debit cards given to those people as they're being bailed out of jail. Now, prepaid debit cards is an interesting concept to me because, you can do that with pretty much minimal tracing. Minimal tracing is actually pretty easy to do when you've got prepaid credit cards or preloaded debit cards and stuff that you can buy stuff with right away. I mean, you could load those up and hand those out. No one would have any idea who they are from. They can be from some company or somebody else, but you wouldn't know that they gave it to them. You wouldn't even have to have the organization attached to who bought it for them, and you could still hand it to them. So we need to figure out exactly how they're doing it. Cash is one way, guys, and I think cash would be the better way if we could trace it, because cash is always attached to a bank. No matter how you do cash, there's going to be a bank somewhere involved in that to have large amounts of cash. And that's why the Somali cash that came out of that story came over the weekend is important. But I think the bigger thing you're going to find, I think we're going to find that it's going to be like prepaid debit cards. And Chris, you remember the investigation we were doing into Indivisible earlier this year? We found that Indivisible had that network set up where they could load debit cards across the country.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and the important thing for people to understand here is that this is a well-oiled operation. These people are highly trained. Now, not the people you see on the ground that are doing on the front, because the actual operatives are not going to put themselves in front of a car. They're going to let their little minions, they're going to let their little passionate volunteers, their paid staffers, whether they're being paid a paycheck or cash or gift cards, or they're just getting their meals paid and maybe a cell phone stipend. This is what I was talking to Walter about a little earlier. Think of it like a political campaign. If anybody's ever volunteered at a political campaign office, you have those people who are passionate. So like when we run campaigns, you would have the staff, and then you would have those loyal volunteers. And those people weren't paid, but they were rewarded in multiple ways because of their contribution to the campaign or to the organization or to the cause. And this is exactly what we're seeing here. I have no doubt that they're using underbelly ways to transfer money off the books. There's no doubt about that. Their bosses have trained under Marxist dictators, Marxist regimes. They've trained with the Black Panthers and some of the very horrific organizations who master this. To answer Data Republican though, what a lot of these have in common is, yes, they're all clustered around fraud. And you mentioned, Walter, they're all in these blue cities. But the most important common denominator here is that they're all sanctuary cities, and they're all home to where a lot of these Somali and Muslim immigrants and illegal immigrants came through and were placed to start to change the census and to change the vote in states like Minnesota, which once was actually a Republican and purple state.
Well, and again, the immigrant populations that they're using, I'm convinced that the immigrant populations, they're just the outside grift on it. They don't care. Like, they don't care about those people at all. But what they can do, especially if, like, for the Somali groups, they have them as a perfect patsy on this because they don't understand what they're doing. And they set them up for it, and they set it all up for them. And then suddenly, if they get caught, they can throw them under the bus. I mean, that's what they can do with these people, really. They can throw them straight under the bus if they need to. But further than that, I mean, the amount of money that's involved in those kind of organizations, the resettlement organizations, all that stuff, that's where the grift is. That's where the grift is. Those NGOs are the ones we need to look at. And I'm saying, I have said it many times, we need to defund NGOs. Yes. We just need to shut off the money entirely to NGOs. That needs to happen. We've got to shut it down. We have to shut it down because that's how this money, and I'm convinced, as I've said for a couple weeks now, that the NGO structure is one of the biggest problems we have because the NGOs, how much money that they're moving around and stuff like that we don't know how much they do. I mean, here's the problem. When you go look at a 990, okay, so a 501c3 all has a 990 that you can go look at. But a lot of these NGOs that I'm looking at, they show that they have 0 employees on full-time staff, but they have 400-something people that they're paying. Well, how much are they getting paid? You don't know because if they keep it under a certain amount, they don't have to report that. They don't have to report exactly. So if someone's making less than $10,000 a year, or they're making less than a certain amount, they don't have to report it. I mean, there was one I just looked at the other day. Somebody sent it to me. And they had 400 employees that are on part-time staff. Well, and they had almost $10 million in salaries and wages. So that would be $25,000 a year if they wanted to give it to 400 people. That's a lot of money. I mean, 25 grand a year, that's $500 a week. And here's the point on that, guys. It doesn't have to be some massive amount of money. Again, my point is, when I was looking at this stuff in Portland, is that they've got the structure there. So they've got the music, the food, the entertainment. They've got the community. They've got everything built up. So you don't need to have a whole bunch of money paid to these people. You can give them $500 a week, and that's extra spending money for them, and they don't really have to work. And if part of their work is community organizing, well, then suddenly you've given them an incentive and a community and food and drink and something to do. Well, you've given them the reason. You have the incentive structure to show up there. And I think that's really what's happening. Now, I know that I guarantee you that there's some of these people that are highly paid, like you mentioned. But those are not the people that are the foot soldiers. The foot soldiers are not the ones that are out there doing that stuff. They're the ones that are in the background that are organizing this stuff. And those people are much higher level, but we don't know who those people are because they're probably the directors of some of these NGOs, but you don't know their names. I mean, they may be out there, but you're not going to see them getting arrested. Okay, their foot soldiers are more than happy to be arrested for them, and especially if foot soldiers know that they're going to get bailed out. I mean, there is one girl in Portland that I watched her get arrested. She was back there. She took an Uber from the police station back to the protest. I mean, 2 hours maybe. I mean, these people are not deterred. Okay, they're not deterred in the slightest. They don't care. They don't care at all. They know that they are going to get out. They know that they've got the full infrastructure behind them. So, I mean, someone saying that just throw a rave, that's what they're doing, guys. They are throwing raves. They had a live DJ outside of the Portland Ice facility 3 nights in a row. Live music for 4.5 hours. Who's paying for it? That's the deal. Who is paying for it? That's the real question at the end of it. Because there is enough money there that they are paying for it. Someone is paying for it, and that's what we need to figure out. And that's what we have to answer, because if we can't answer who's paying for this stuff, it doesn't matter. We've got to shut that kind of money off. Okay, if we can shut off the money to the NGOs at the upper level, whatever. But if they're getting some of this stuff paid for through the fraud organizations, that's a whole different scenario, because they've already got the fraud. They've already got the grift. They've already got the LLC set up. We need to answer all of those questions. And that stuff hasn't been done yet. Everyone talks about the Soros money. Soros money is only part of it, guys. We've got to figure out how they're paying the foot soldiers. We've got to figure that out.
Yeah, well, no, everyone talks about the Soros money, but there's other foundations that are paying these things, as we see with the Sunrise movement, the Indivisible movement. You have unions, right. You have SEIU, you have the same government unions that are suing the Trump administration left and right on every decision he makes, from ordering ink pens to removing staff, whatever it is. They're suing them. And coincidentally, all of these people tend to use the same 3 firms, right? And so the upper echelon of these people, you're going to find at the cocktail parties with United States senators. You're going to find them with some of the most powerful political people on the Democratic side of the aisle, with union leaders, with international political directors for unions and things like that. That's how these people operate. You're talking, but you're also talking about some, really big foundations and things like that are running through, and our tax dollars. And that's the biggest grift of everything right there.
Yeah, the tax dollar part of it is something I know we can shut off. And that's something, and someone just asked here, just saying, I'm going to answer this question. They said, articles of impeachment against Tim Walz. Yes, they were filed today. You guys can go check out Dustin Grange post about that. They are going to be filed against him in the House, and they might get through in the House, but they're probably not going to go anywhere in the Senate. So, it is a good thing, I think. He should be impeached, but I don't think it's going to go anywhere in the Senate, especially because one of the other senators in the Senate there is Amy Klobuchar's, is going to be Amy Klobuchar's running mate. So it's not going to go anywhere. But, it still should happen. My thing about the impeachment stuff, whenever you see this sort of thing, it needs to happen anyway. Make the focus, make it known that people are impeaching this guy because of this. A couple other people are asking about how many NGOs are really involved in this. Guys, there's thousands of NGOs in this country. Thousands upon thousands of them. I mean, there's no real, I don't have a real number on how many people are in the NGO world. I have no idea. There's got to be tens of thousands.
Well, I think Doge uncovered, it was 40-something thousand NGO. That's just the left-wing NGOs. Right. And so, and here's the crazy thing, as you saw, Walter, when you were doing your investigation in Ohio, these NGOs will pop up 11 or 15 or 20 different organizations in one day and just continue to replicate. and continue to replicate, right? And because they have the template, they have the people that can do it. They can insert the money wherever they want to insert the money. And really, quite frankly, if you want to understand, a little base vote operation in terms of the urban core GOTV strategies of the Democratic Party, a lot of it's this, right? It's gift cards, it's cash, it's things that people don't want to talk about publicly. It's not definitely legal, but this is definitely the way that they operate to get their ground crews out there that
Right.
they don't want on campaign finance documents because of their scrupulous background.
Yeah, I mean the like gift cards and stuff like that. That's sort of the stuff that I like. You think about it. How are they getting the money to these people? How are they being able to spend the money, guys? If someone loads up a debit card of some kind, like you could do that from a separate organization. You could do that from a different business. Hell, you could do that from a personal person, and you'd never know. I mean, they could just hand these cards to these people, and it doesn't matter at that point. I mean, the card, unless that card specifically is found and then traced back to whoever purchased it for them. And why would they give that up? I mean, that's just a card that's going to sit in someone's wallet. They're not going to be able to look into that. I mean, they would have to have a reason to subpoena and figure out where that cash or why that card's even in his wallet. And he could just say his grandma gave it to him. I mean, it's almost impossible to trace that sort of stuff. And that's the part of this that we need to look into, because if we can figure out how these people are getting that kind of money, if they're getting $1,000 every time they get arrested, because I know that in the Antifa handbooks, they get bonuses when they do direct actions, where they get arrested and stuff like that. That's bonuses to them. They get more money when they do that sort of stuff. And that's all within Antifa's direct, that's all in their own documents. There's a great book to read on Antifa that's from Andy NGO, which is fantastic. I mean, it's worth reading. Everybody should read it because, he made a good point in the book that he talks about it. He says that, essentially what Antifa has become is it's like hooligan culture for football teams in like the UK, right? Like, everyone, have you ever seen the movie Green Street Hooligans, where they all fight all the time and it's all the, football club versus football club? He's like, well, that's kind of what they did here. They adapted that kind of culture and then applied that to US. And from what you see on the streets, I'll tell you right now, it's almost just like that. You've got a group of people that they are willing to fist fight in the middle of the streets, and their teams are Republican or Democrat. That's who their teams are. It's the same concept. It's the same thing. I mean, Antifa is not really a new organization. It's existed over in Europe for many, many years, which is why it took off over here. And our media is complicit in it. Essentially, they said that Antifa is not real. It's not a real thing. But it's existed for a long time. It's just a kind of a loose structure to it, and that's done intentionally. I mean, it's done intentionally, almost like a terrorist cell. I mean, that's the way they've done it. But if we need to figure out how to shut this stuff off, we have to figure out who is getting the money on the ground. Like someone mentioned a minute ago, who's paying their bail. We know that their money's the bail is being paid, and that's the sort of stuff we need to figure out. Matt Walsh actually did a really good job on this today. I recommend everybody go watch his podcast today, because he talked about how some of these organizations are paying bail funds, and they're doing it by saying, oh, this is what our structure's for, but they use it for different things and then get that money back after the bail bond after the charges are dropped. They get that bail money back, and then that money can be used for something else. It's a big grift. I mean, and they know what they're doing, because they do it in areas where they know that their people can be brought back out of prison quickly, because they know that the DAs and the judges in that area are on their side. That's why this doesn't happen at this doesn't happen in, Texas. Okay. Like this, you saw what happened over the weekend. I'm sure you guys saw in Austin, Texas, how quickly all that ended. That ended real fast. You don't mess with Texas cops. It don't work like that there. I mean, it was over before they even thought it would begin. But this is the problem when you have it in Minnesota, where Minnesota, they've already defunded the police. They've already got the DAs and structure in place. Same thing in Portland. Hell, the people in Portland are yelling at their mayor even now. I mean, they don't even care. Like they maybe have 100% on their side, but no, we need to get rid of him. We don't like him enough. He's not kowtowing to us enough. The police are still enforcing the law somewhat in this area. We need to make sure they don't enforce it at all. I mean, that's what these people want. It's really something else. Who pays the green hats? That's the same question, guys. Who pays the green hats? The legal observers that sit around outside of these places. Those people are all over the place. Okay, I mean, those people all get paid. Someone is paying those people to be there. Someone's paying all those people to show up. And we need to figure out, not at the top level, we need to figure out at the bottom level who and how they get that money. That's what we need to figure out. No one's done that yet. No one's figured that out yet. So, for me, I think that's where I'm going to focus. I'm going to on the next layer of this for me. I'm going to start going into these places and figuring this out, because I don't think we need more videos of the foot soldiers fighting in the streets. Okay, I think we've seen enough of that. I think we know that they do that. It's pretty clear that their foot soldiers fight in the streets and they throw stuff at ICE agents. Let's figure out where the foot soldiers go after they go home. Let's figure that out. And I think we can do that. And I think that's something we should actually look into and try and figure out. So that's what I'm going to start working on. And, I'm sure they're not going to like that, but, turns out I'm pretty good at this. So I don't think I'm going to have much of a problem.
Yeah, well, they shouldn't follow ICE agents and law enforcement home. They shouldn't use technology to identify people and then start to harass their family. There's a host of things that they don't like, but they shouldn't do it the same. And it's not that one wrong makes, two wrongs make a right. It's just simply that we have to know who these people are. We have to know the operation. We have to know who's funding them. I would encourage people to stop commenting on these things as if they're organic. The moment that those who are Trump supporters or conservatives or Republicans, right? The moment that they start in unison to make it known that these are not organic, these are paid operations, and they start to focus in on the operators and who's funding it, where they're going to for their breaks, what doors are they sliding into to get rest, who's supporting them, there's a whole host of ways that you can start to track these operations down. And when you can do that, and when the narrative shifts and it's overwhelmingly about it not being organic, that this is funded by organizations, and then we start to find out who it is, of course, in unison to what we're going to see is probably pending indictments and investigations, then it makes it far more effective. Because what's happening right now continues to happen. This is why they do it, is that they guarantee themselves, because you should, that the mainstream media is going to pretend as if this is organic. They're going to try to make a political spin to be against Trump, and this isn't the countries that we should live in. We're going to have Mark Ruffalo in a $30,000 tux with a Latino dude holding $10,000 bottles of champagne on a tray, walking behind him, talking about how this isn't the America we should be living in. You know what I mean? Like, this is what's happening. They do believe that they have the moral authority over you. They do believe that they have the moral authority over us. And they don't care about the Lake and Rileys of the world. They don't care about the Riley Gaines of the world. They don't care about any of these things. They care about silencing you. They care about shaming your faith. They care about all of those things because they have the moral authority. And you can argue back and forth if you want, to your point, Walter, about these fighting in the streets and all this stupid stuff. You could do it all day long. It just fuels them, right? Again,
Yep.
They want wins in their micro intifada. This is a direct quote from their training manuals because it helps them, right? It fuels people who like to fight to show up and fight.
Well, but not only that is that the part of what they do is they want some of this stuff because it helps their propaganda stuff. When they've got people fighting in the streets, they use it. They use it as propaganda. They use the videos and the clips and they take them and they play them as their propaganda hit pieces and they run them on the media all the time. When they've got ICE out there having to defend the facility outside of Portland, when they show up outside in the full military uniforms and using pepper balls and everything like that, you know what they do? The radicals retreat and they push their peaceful people to the front so they get shot with the pepper balls and stuff. And their crazy nut job, actual like a true believer Antifa people, they've already retreated back and allow that to get on camera. That's what they want, and that's what they do. I mean, this stuff. And the amazing thing about this is that none of this playbook is new. This is all the same thing they were doing in 2020, and we're letting them do it again now. They mastered this in 2020. They mastered this entire setup, this entire organization setup, this entire structure of this propaganda machine that Antifa uses. They've mastered it. And I'm telling you right now, guys, this is January, okay? This summer is going to be crazy. They are going to be absolutely unhinged this summer when it's actually warm out. That's why I actually went out to Portland first, because I thought that Portland would be a little bit, it's warmer there. Maybe they'd protest more there, but they'd protest like hell out in Minnesota, even though it's freezing. It is going to be an absolutely insane amount of people that show up this summer, and they're going to fund every dollar that they have because they're going to be worried they're going to get it shut off. They're going to spend every cent that they've got trying to make this summer hell, and that's what they're going to do. They're absolutely going to do it.
And here's the thing that I caution people, and we've been talking about this, Walter, for a year. Wait until 2026, right? we've been talking about this because it was a clear as day playbook. All chips are on the table. They have to take the majority in Congress and the Senate, or the majority in Congress and a couple of seats in the Senate, in order to prevent themselves, their leaders, their funding from being shut off. Because once it's shut off and they're exposed, then they have to figure out what else to do, right? Like, this is an important part of their life. Let's just take the money out for a minute. This is their life. Everybody they know. This is their culture, their protest culture. This is
Their
their
protest
fraternity,
culture.
right? This is
Yeah, it
and
is.
so it's a religion for them, and so this is why it's so dangerous. But I will say, this also favors um, third world uprisings, right? And cultures like that Somalis and others are used to having, you know. And so what happens is the crazier this gets, the more advantageous it gets for these migrants and these people who come from countries where this is totally acceptable. Like,
Yep.
it is a no big deal to see somebody getting hit with a machete on your way to, if you even go to school, on your way in some of these countries, right? And
Yep.
these are people who've come to our country for ill intentions or good intentions, that have generations of people who have used to civil war and uprisings and massacres, right? So they don't care. And this is the problem: is they look at this and say, this is our right, this is our funding, we were promised this. And therefore, when the money stops, which they have stopped them, they're stopping or have stopped the money from going to Somalia and other countries, taxpayer dollars. They've put a stop on some of this. That's just going to create more of a desperate action. And
Oh yeah,
that
I mean that's exactly what's going to happen. It's going to be a lot more desperate, and this is what we need to be concerned about. Which is why my point is we need to get this stuff under control, and we need to understand how they move that money around on the lower level. We need to be able to figure that out now. Like, we need to figure this out within the next 4 or 5 months before we really get into the summer. Because if we don't, and we don't figure out how this actually works during the summer, things are going to get crazy. Okay, like, things are going to get really crazy. We're going to have a summer of love. They're going to come up with it. And listen, look what they did here. Okay, this entire protest that they created. How did they create it? A random person, a random lady from Missouri, drove 5.5 hours in the bright early of the morning to show up and protest ICE in the middle of the street. Okay, that's what happened. She gets shot because she tries to run over an ICE officer. And they create, what do they create? She's a poet. Oh my goodness. She is outstanding, upstanding, amazing woman. She just, she was just there. She just had, she was just, dropping her kids off from school. Listen, I was outside of these protests. They're sitting there screaming and yelling. Oh my God, this woman is so great. She's so virtuous. She's such a good person. Guys, this woman's nuts. Okay, like her person that she was with, her, wife or whatever the hell it is, she was taken away from her kids because she was putting cigarettes out on them. These are not good people. These are not good people at all. But to the left, she's a poet. She's a poet. She's the greatest human of all time. Listen, they're going to do this, okay? They don't care who they have to use to create this agenda for it. That doesn't mean anything to them. That doesn't mean anything to them. They don't care if they're a good person, if they're a bad person. All they're going to do is find one, latch onto it, and now what they're doing is they're increasing the body count. They're claiming that ISIS killed like 30 people or something like that, and they're going to just keep calling it this. But the amazing thing is that they haven't changed the language at all. Okay, they're saying that this is the secret police, the Gestapo. That they used the same language in 2020. They used the exact same words. There is no difference. It's the exact same playbook. The difference is that this time is that we need to actually be ready for it. We need to be able to understand how it all functions, because if we're not ready for it, 2026 is going to make 2020 look like a joke. Okay, like there's enough tension right now in the winter that this summer is going to be wild. Like it is going to be absolutely unhinged, and we need to get a hold of how they get this money around before that, because if we let them burn cities to the ground, it's going to be just as bad. It's going to be just as bad. They're going to cause as much chaos and destruction as they possibly can before we get into the midterms. And they're going to hope that riles their base up. The real reason that they do a lot of this stuff, guys, and there's another post I put out over the weekend where I was outside of one of the rallies, like the daytime rallies, not the evening, attack ICE rallies. This is where they get all their voters. They've got they're walking through the crowd registering people to vote. Every single person, you walk on the edges of the crowd, there's 24 people doing this. Okay, they're anybody that they walk up to, hey, are you registered to vote in Portland? Hey, are you registered to vote? And they're filling out whole sheets. Okay, and the reason they do this is because you've got a captured audience. You've got multiple hours of a captured audience surrounded by propaganda. Okay, so you've got a captured audience surrounded by propaganda and a perfect opportunity to say, hey, sign on to this. Look what we're doing here. That's what they're doing. And they're doing it on a mass scale in every one of their cities. And people are like, well, it doesn't matter. They already control those cities. It doesn't matter to them, okay? Keeping their control as much as possible in each one of these cities, that's how they're doing it. You're wondering why they can't flip these cities, why we can't make a dent in these cities. Well, that's why, because they're registering voters every single weekend. It's not like this is an irregular thing. This is happening every single weekend. They've got huge protests. Protest culture is register vote culture. That's what they're doing. That's how they're running it. That's why they keep doing it, because they can know that if they keep this up and they keep it rolling, that they can continuously build their coalition so that they never lose. And that's what they're doing in these big cities. And the only way you can stop that is you got to figure out how to shut the damn money off to these organizations that are so well funded that they can keep meat and cheese trays out in the middle of the streets. I mean, you have to do it. You've got to figure it out. And Pam Bondi, I don't think she's been good at this at all during her tenure. And I'm glad that whoever's going to be this assistant attorney general, from what I've heard, by the way, Chris, that they're going to report directly to the White House, which I think is fantastic. Okay, we need to bypass Bondi. Like, we got to get this out of the way, because she's obviously not got the stones to do what needs to be done here, because people need to start going to jail. I mean, some of these organizations that we were looking at, what Matt Walsh found, just those organizations, they're obviously not operating in what they're supposed to be doing as a 501c3. They're not doing what they're supposed to, but they're being funded anyway. So we have to shut that money off. We need to close down the constant money that's being pumped into these places, because like I said, it is oozing money. Okay, you don't have the kind of stuff that these people have for these scene setting, the multiple different camera crews set up specifically. And the camera crews, by the way, they're only there for the peaceful part, and then they leave. The moment that everything ends for the peaceful part, they all disappear, and then the violent part starts. I mean, that's what they did every night. And this is going to continue, and we need to figure out how that all happens. Okay, all of that money needs to be traced. And if we can figure that out before we get into the summer, we'll be in a much better position. I swear that's the reason we need to stay focused.
Yeah, I think that the other thing that, man, if I had the ability to send the Trump administration talking points, he had I don't know if folks have like CBS or whatever, but he had a phenomenal interview today on CBS with the Tony. I can never remember Tony's last name, out of Miami. Really nice guy. But he interviewed him in the Ford plant. Donald Trump did a great job on his interview. However, when Minnesota came up, the new spin here is that this gal's dad was a Trump supporter, and Donald Trump's like, oh, I didn't know that, because they're trying to play at his emotions, right? Was he not? I don't know, but it's irrelevant to the story, right? It's that there's nothing relevant about his dad being a Trump supporter. What's relevant is that she is part of a Marxist organization of NGO networks that are trained to do precisely what she did. And their manual tells her that when you do this, there is a chance of lethal force. She knew what she was doing. And so what I would say to President Trump, or anybody who was advising him, if they were watching this, or somebody who's watching this has that contact, it would be to make sure he has a talking point, that when he's asked about this, it's like, because obviously losses of life to the president are super important, and he did say that. But it would also pivot to, however, don't be a part of a Marxist organization that teaches you to do these things. Don't go do these things. Don't say this. Don't do this to law enforcement and put yourself in harm's way. The people training you, the people paying you, they're not the ones doing it. They find people like you to do it. Don't do it. Mm-hmm. And even if it was like an address to the nation or something of the sort, when all of this starts to unfold, it needs to be known to the American people that this is happening in our country. This is not organic. This is a network. And when you do these things, you will be held accountable. Their manuals even tell them this is not legal, but we do it in a group to prevent you from being arrested, to prevent them from doing lethal force on you, because the more people that are around, the more intimidated they are, and the less likely they are to use lethal force. Almost a direct quote from the manual. So that would be my plea to anybody in the orbits of President Trump, that they have to start hitting the fact that these are not organic operations. When they have the captured audience of mainstream media, young people don't watch it, right? The average person isn't even watching this. You know who is, though? The retired people. the union members whose dues are still going to the unions that are paying some of these groups that are doing this, right? These are the people, our moms, our dads, our grandpas, whoever, that are still watching legacy media. And so that message is super important because they were the last group to fully support Kamala Harris. I think it was like 57% or something like that, that heavily that supported her, that kind of 65 and older crowd. And so that would be a huge victory for them in the narrative warfare if he were to pivot and start hitting that home.
I agree. Listen, we need to make sure that everybody's aware of it. I mean, the inorganic part of it, for all of us that listen and pay attention, like most of the viewers of this show, you guys all understand this probably. You may get that. But we need to figure out a way to get that message to more than just the people that are paying attention, okay? The fact that this is inorganic needs to be shown in a way that people get it. And that's why I think the fraud stuff, that's why the fraud stuff hits so hard, okay? The fraud stuff hits so hard because Jubba Daycare, like the one that went viral for me, right? Jubba Daycare is absurd. Okay, it's freaking obvious fraud. Okay, Jubba Daycare is not doing a proficient tax audit. Okay, everyone is aware of that. Okay, same with Quality Leering Center. You're not leering much at Quality Leering Center. I think that's very clear for everyone to understand. Those things hit. Okay, they hit because people can feel it, they can grasp it. And I think the problem that the right has had for so long is that everyone just goes, "It's Soros." That doesn't help you. Okay, that doesn't help you. You can't just point to one big person and say, this is who's funding it, this is what's causing it. That doesn't do anything, okay? It does not answer the questions that people have. They say, okay, well, if he's funding it, but how? What does that mean? What does it mean that he's funding it? What does it mean that he's funding it? Where is that money going? How is it funding things? What is it funding? Okay? And that's what we need to answer. We need to get people on the ground in these places. And you know what the funny part about it is? I was thinking about this, Chris. We need to do what the FBI used to do, which is we need to infiltrate these actual organizations. Like, we need to go into them. We need to learn what they're doing on the inside of them, because that's what the FBI used to do. The FBI used to be an organization that when some sort of extremist group showed up, they would infiltrate them with CHSs and all sorts of other people, and they'd figure out what was going on the inside of them, and then they'd take them down. That's what they used to do. But they stopped doing that. And the Antifa, the reason that it's been so successful is because no one has done that. The reason it's been so successful is because there hasn't been infiltration in it. And I think that the problem is that part of the reason for that is that the FBI is, again, staffed with leftists. You've got leftists that believe it. The FBI, they would go investigate this. Well, what if you're a leftist and you're an FBI? Do you want to investigate the leftist? Maybe you do. Maybe you don't say anything. I mean, I think that's part of the problem. So at some point, we're going to have to start sending people into these organizations. And the problem is it's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be safe. I mean, this is going to be a dangerous operation to be able to do some of this stuff, but I think we have to do it. I mean, I think that's the only answer. And, I'm going to figure out what I need to do to be part of this stuff, because this is what needs to happen. We have to get the answers at the lowest level possible. And if we can't get the answers at the lowest level possible, then someone else needs to figure it out. I mean, to me, I think the best thing we can do is get into these groups, figure out exactly how it works. We need to go into the groups. We need to go into their trainings. We need to go through their entire processes. We need to go through it and essentially join these groups and figure it out. And I think we have to do that. That's our only option. That's our only option to figure it out. So, whatever we have to do to be able to do that, it's not going to be safe. It's not going to be easy, but this is what we have to do to save the country. I mean, if we have to go into these places and figure it out from that level up and go from the bottom up, that's what we got to do. There's no choice. There's no real choice at the bottom of it. We have to figure it out, because if we can't learn how to stop the money flowing, then none of this matters. Because if they've just got infinite cash, and it's taxpayer cash, and it's, NGO cash, and no one's going to shut that cash off, nothing of this matters. Like I said, we're not going to get anywhere fighting with the foot soldiers. We're just not. And we have to fix it we've got to take out the infrastructure that operates for it, because if we don't, then none of this matters. And they're just going to continue to fund everything. Even if you throw all of their people on the ground in jail, they'll go find more radicals. They don't care. And they'll bail the radicals out. I mean, hell, in Portland, apparently you don't even get arrested. You get thrown right back out of jail. I mean, they rotate you in and out faster than you even get there. Like I said, 2 hours, one of the girls that I watched her get arrested, she was out back on the street, and a freaking Uber dropped her right back off at the protest within 2 hours. I was shocked. I was like, wow, that is a hell of a turnaround. That is a hell of a turnaround. Not even a whole night in jail. You are back out there in 2 hours. Let alone the fact that I didn't even mention this yet, that these people, they knew what the shifts of the ICE people in the facility, they knew the shifts that they were working. They were radioing to each other. I was listening to them on the first night that I was there before they figured out who I was. They were radioing to people saying, hey, we know that there's a patrol that's supposed to come in tonight. We know that there's somebody supposed to showing up tonight in the ICE facility. They're supposed to be bringing somebody in. They knew. They've got insiders. They've got data. They've got actual insiders leaking them information on a regular basis. I mean, this is extremely organized, and this is a whole network of people that they've got people in government, they've got people in the state government, they've got people everywhere. So we need to figure out where the money moves around, and then once we start taking out the money, we got to start taking out their key operatives, because if we don't, none of this matters.
Yeah, no, I mean, none of it matters. One other thing, though, is, I mean, a lot of times you hear like so and so got fired because, because they, were a FBI agent in charge of this or that, and so they end up getting fired, right? Like January 6th being a big one. Some of the, we go through the list, but what happens though is they fall to a very important private sector contractor who protects their security level clearance, and they still get inside access to all of their people on the inside, right? And this is a problem, right? This is a major problem, because these folks aren't just disappearing. Like, it's not like they're just going and no longer, they're like, oh, I got fired, and they leave, right? No, they're going to a private entity that is got government contracts to do the exact same thing on the private sector side, and they're using that access to continue to foment resistance against the president of the United States. And this is it's just a crazy time. I can't even believe some of this stuff is having to be said out loud, but it is. And
well, I mean, it's just trying to figure out how we're gonna actually fight against it. At least people are paying attention to it at this time. In 2020, we knew it was happening, but this time it's different because we can see that they're running the same playbook. And the problem is that I think everybody last time we figured out, okay, we know how the outside structure works. We get it. Okay, the money comes from the NGOs, Soros, all these people. We get that. Okay, no one cares about that anymore. Okay, what we need to do now is figure out how it gets to the granular level. And if we can figure out the bottom and go work from the bottom up, that's how we're going to stop it. And that's the only way we're going to stop it. And I think that's what we need to do next. Guys, this is The Political Theater. I'm Walter Curt. This is Chris Marino. Thank you guys for joining us this evening. We will be back tomorrow night, 9 p.m. for more of The Political Theater. This show is still on the road right now. I'll be back home at the studio on Friday. So until then, guys, we'll be doing a road show. So we'll see you guys tomorrow evening for more of the theater. Make sure you guys follow myself and Chris. Go to x.com, go to @WCDispatch, and that's where you can follow us for more. You go to WCDispatch.com, and you can subscribe to both of us on X. You can always get subscriptions to us, guys. At the end, this show is run by just me and Chris here. He's a co-host on the show. He helps me out. Make sure you guys subscribe, follow us on X, and make sure you guys go to WCDispatch.com for more. The investigations into the fraud stuff is going to be continuing, and I've got another number of updates that's probably going to be coming out by the end of this week, referring to where I'm going to be going next and what I'm going to be looking at, because I've got New Jersey is going to be up next, guys. And obviously, when we get back home when I get back to the studio on Friday, we will actually have a normal X space where people can chime in on the show, and we'll have a normal 2-hour show when I get home. So, guys, thank you guys for being here, and we will see you guys tomorrow night in The Political Theater. Thanks, guys.